This is the Recovery Lab.
Here we dive deep into the struggles, victories, and hope that stem from recovery.
No shame, no judgment, just truth, grace, and inspiration.
Let's walk this road together.
Hey guys, welcome. It's Recovery Lab. This is episode 121, and I'm Brynn Knox.
I'm David Sugg.
And I'm Daniel Anderson.
And today we have, I always say like a really special guest, a really important guest, but like I mean it this time.
For real. Oh, no. This time is legit.
It's for real. No, this is someone that I have personally known for a really long time, and but we haven't kept in touch this whole time. And we were just talking about it's been like 20 years since we saw each other. Jeremiah Wheeler, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So you've been busy the last 20 years.
Yes. Very busy.
It's kind of fun to like know people, and then life happens, and then all of a sudden you're different people, and you're like, oh wow, we kind of went through something kind of similar. And that thing for us was substance use and addiction, and it kind of destroyed both our lives in different ways. And so I'm really glad that you're here to talk about what you went through, and what the people around you went through too, because it is such a thing that affects so many other people in our lives. Okay, so Jeremiah, you wrote this book, The Unlikely Executive.
Yeah.
I just need to say that again. Jeremiah Wheeler wrote a book called The Unlikely Executive, and it is so good. It's from dope and despair to leadership and legacy. And in this book, you talk so much about a lot of really vulnerable things and a lot of things that people would be kind of nervous to share, but you shared it. Before we get into the book, I want to talk about the courage it took to do that and how you felt writing it.
Well, I think the courage is you're in a position where you're on the edge of a cliff, and you get pushed off, and you either land on your feet or land on your head. Mm-hmm. And I think that choice is what we choose when we're falling, right? And I was on that edge for a long time, and in denial, and I think there's two really catalyst moments for me. That one was my wife pushed me off the edge of the cliff, and then two, I made a choice to seek help because I was tired of living like I was living a double life, and tired of disappointing my kids and disappointing myself and disappointing the person that I knew I was supposed to be deep down. And I think there's this inherent knowledge that we all have in our hearts where we know we're supposed to be. And that hole that all addicts have that we're always trying to fill with substances is something that we know we'll not be able to fill it, but we don't know how to. And so it was kind of like, okay, the only way that I know that I've seen others do the right thing and get help was to go get help. And so that's what I did. I decided to go get help. And through that process, I think that therapy obviously helped me the most. Sitting in a circle, talking to other people about your problems is probably one of the most revealing things about yourself. It's amazing what happens when you just talk about things, right? Openly and honestly, and you don't feel the judgment, and you're like, I mean, this guy sitting across from me, his life's way worse than mine. I mean, he's homeless, or he's been homeless. And, I think you learn to appreciate your blessings, and you learn to appreciate life in general. And it just helped me find myself. So the courage was like, the more that I talked about it, the more I felt empowered, the more I felt like I was finding a place. Mm-hmm. And then that just helped me say, you know what, I told my story so many times, And, you know, a lot of people ask you the questions like, well, where are you from? What'd you do? You know, how did you get to where you are today? And I told that story, and everyone would say, man, you need to write a book. That's a really good story. It's inspiring. I felt something when you told me that story. And I don't know if it's because the way I told it or what. And so I just, you know, I thought about it, and I looked at different ghostwriters and all the things. And then finally, in the middle of me getting my MBA, which was another perfect timing moment, I haven't always been good at timing, but I decided, let's just jump in and write the book. And I'm glad I did. I'm sure there will be another one later in life. It's a second piece to the memoir, because life's not over yet. But the second one will be much more positive.
Well, this one had a lot of, I mean, when I was reading it, I texted you and I was like, this page broke my heart. And it was the part where you're talking about getting high with your dad. And as a child, I must say. And tell us a little bit about your childhood. There's so many things in here where I was just like, wow, like it really broke my heart.
Yeah, I think so early childhood, like before, from you know, the time that I could remember until I was 11-ish, maybe 12 years old, I was a very normal childhood. My dad was a Pentecostal pastor, and his brother was a missionary in Africa, and you know, we were like inundated in church. That's all we knew. From the time that I could remember, my brother and I and my sister, we woke up on Sunday, we got dressed for church, we went to church, we came back home, we ate a sandwich, we went to another church where my dad pastored 2 churches, and then that evening we went to church again. And so it was like, that was life, right? We were preacher's kids. And so everyone, you know, it was just this big family, this support, right? I always felt safe. I felt loved. I felt everything that a child should feel. And so it was a very normal life. Yes, we were Pentecostal, so we weren't looked at as very normal in terms of
weird.
the way we dress, the way, you know, we don't have TVs. You know, I didn't have a TV until I was 13. And so we didn't get all the movie references and show references that kids talked about because we never watched TV. But we played outside constantly, so we learned how to build and break things. But I would say childhood was very normal. And then when I was 12 or so, and we actually moved, we lived in Woodville, Mississippi. That's where my dad pastored the churches. And we moved to Pearl, and we were attending a church in Pearl, and he started doing like evangelist work and traveling around. And then we decided, you know, I don't know why, I was still a kid, but we decided we moved back to Natchez, and that's where I was born, was in Natchez, but I didn't really know Natchez that well because I'd never lived there. And it seemed like when we got back to Natchez, the wheels just kind of fell off the bus. And of course, you know, you get older and you learn things, and I remember things like my dad would never, at that age, in that time period when we moved back to Natchez, he would never let us drink out of this big cup that he always had, because he always said he had like a cold or something. And I realize now that it was he was drinking alcohol, and you know, he was a pastor. He wasn't, you know, I idolized him for everything he stood for. And then when the wheels fell off the bus, my mom and him, you know, they started fighting a lot, and they argued all the time. And then finally he just bolted and left. And so then it was kind of like, okay, as a kid, you learn to adapt really fast. I mean, I think kids they adapt to their environment really, really fast, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. You just kind of go, right? You go with the flow. You do what you see around you. And my mom immediately just kind of went back to her old ways before we were born, which was, you know, short hair, blonde hair, dyeing her hair, wearing makeup, pants, and all that, which was a shock to all of us because we had never seen.
Busting out them Levi's, man. Yeah.
So it was
Mom.
kind of like a shock, right? We were like, what the hell? And then I kind of remember having conversations too with my brother and sister at the time. And of course, we kind of liked it because we were getting to watch TV and we were getting to stay out later and, kind of do whatever we wanted. Cause then my mom, she started hanging out with old friends and people in the bars. And then next thing you know, she's always at the bar. Like I knew the corner bar and Natch's phone number by heart. I knew the other 2 bars she hung out at, like, cause we didn't have cell phones. And so if you needed mom, call her at the bar. And
That's so sad.
yeah,
You say you had an easy time adapting, but that's a hard reset. I mean, to go from multiple church services on a Sunday, family support a whole lot, then dad gone drinking out of a solo cup, mom hanging out at the bar. I mean, just I hear what you're saying, but I find that really, really hard to believe. Like, was that freedom? Was that change? You think the thing that kind of set you spinning early before you actually even started partying? I mean, because that's a big shakeup. That's like a snow globe just going, all right, everything's one way. And that's just huge, man. That's like bigger than divorce. That's like the trifecta.
Oh yeah. Well, it started with the divorce and then it was the trifecta for sure. But I think that's also the trauma you bury, right? And then you replace it with a reason why it wasn't so bad, right? And then you dig it up 20 years later when you're in rehab, going through therapy, that it was a problem and it did affect you. And, you learn that you were abandoned.
Are you still ever like looking back on them now, your parents, and just kind of like, what, WTF, like what the hell? Or have you gotten over that? Are you doing your own thing now, completely just accepted it and moved on? Or
I've learned to accept it. My dad's still a bad drug addict.
he's still alive?
Yeah, he's still alive. He's like a cockroach, man.
Yeah.
You can't kill that sucker. And my brother's a bad drug addict. And my mom, she's sober. She had a drinking problem, I think, obviously. But she's been sober for a few years.
Awesome.
And, I still talk to her a pretty good bit. But the way that I reset myself to, one, forgive others around me is, and I think I learned a lot of this in just leadership, in general leadership, right? Where, one, you have to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and understand that they also had trauma. They also were brought up a certain way. They're trying to get by just like everybody else, including your parents, right? And then you have to have empathy for the people, right? And appreciate where they're coming from. They don't have all the answers. And so that's kind of what I tell myself is my mom had a really, really rough childhood. I mean, her mom was a massive alcoholic, very abusive. Her dad was a honky tonker. He ran around playing shows and doing things. And so, she had some pretty traumatic events happen to her that I actually talked to her about later in life, like within the last few years, because, I'm kind of trying to help her unpack to help me at the same time.
Yeah.
And it makes me, one, feel sorry for her and feel sorry for the childhood that she was brought up in. And, there again, she's just trying to get by and be a parent the best way she knows how. And I'm not making excuses for her, still hold her accountable and make her at least understand this is not normal. This is not the way things should have been. It should have been done differently. But, it's easy to fall into a trap and then to begin to justify it. Yeah. So
it's a healthy way of looking at it. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's the only way I know how.
You say something in the book about about your dad. Hanging out with him was a rare privilege. Getting high with your dad isn't a good thing to do, but he was my dad. And I like how you put it here where you said, I got good at lying to myself about the doubts and convincing myself that there was nothing wrong with what I was doing. And so that kind of seems like maybe that's the way you played life as like you knew kind of deep down like this isn't right, but it was like you easily squashed those with like just sort of justifying it in any way you could, probably to like protect your heart, right?
Yeah, well, it's a natural defense mechanism we don't even know we have that we're actually implementing and putting into practice without knowing you're doing it, right? And I see it now that I've been sober. Tomorrow actually is my 7-year
Wow.
Way to go, dude.
mark. And so I see it all around me now, right? It's pretty evident when people have these justifications and they talk about things in a roundabout way that makes them feel okay with what they're doing. And it was kind of strange now that I look back on it, like in recovery, and I'm like, you know, I'd gotten to a point, and I guess it was so early in childhood and in such a critical development stage as a preteen and then a teenager, of hanging out with kids that were like-minded, that did drugs, that smoked pot and sold pot and, you know, just did stupid kid stuff.
Mhm.
And then you just kind of like, oh, okay, well, everybody's doing it. And your world is only what you know within your own four walls of your addiction and your ecosystem, so to speak. And so you really think that this is the way life is. And yes, you see those other people on the outside, but it's always some other reason why they are where they are, like from, you know, whether it's wealth or, you know, they have a different family, they have both parents in their life. But, you know, I justified it until I met my wife. And, you know, I still don't know to this day why she gave me 5 minutes of her time. But she told me more than one time, she said, this is not normal. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, this isn't normal. Like this environment that you live in, and your mom and your sister and your brother and the way y'all interact and the drugs and the, like, you're working every day and you're supporting your brother and your sister and your mom's like in the bars all the time. And like, this isn't the way family is supposed to be. And she came from a broken family too, but she knew like this, something like this is jacked up. And
What were your feelings when she pointed that out to you? Because I'm sure that was sort of like a mind-blowing situation, being like, really? Like, is this not normal? Like, how did that feel when she pointed that out to you?
well, my first reaction is I'm defensive.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not because I'm trying to protect what I like doing, because we weren't to that point, right, where I was trying to hide and be a different person and like, but I was kind of like, okay, whatever. You know, I didn't really care.
Yeah.
It didn't mean as much. But when we first met, I will say, I asked her some questions, like the second or third time we met, actually. And I said, just flat out, what will it take for a guy like me to date a girl like you? She's 5 years older than me. She was a nurse, and I'm just a 19-year-old pothead kid that likes racing dirt bikes. And
What a catch.
yeah, I know. She said, well, a girl like me would never date a guy like you, and let me tell you why. And she said, because you're a pothead, you have no direction or future, because you don't talk about it, you're not chasing it. All you worry about is racing dirt bikes, and you're a pothead, and you have no high school diploma, you have no GED, you have no college education, nothing. And so I was like, that kind of shocked me, right? That kind of set me back. And I said, you know what? So I quit smoking pot the next week.
Was that hard?
You know, at the time it wasn't.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, really wasn't. Like, I didn't even think twice about it. Like, I quit. I went and signed up, took my GED, took my ACT, and I was making stuff happen because I really wanted to date her. And I was showing her that I had what it took to get the job done, because I was always a hard worker. I always worked really, really hard.
Well, you had to.
Yeah, well, I didn't have a choice. Well, I did, I guess. I mean, my brother and sister didn't work very
that's
hard.
true.
Yeah.
They chose not to, and you know, they just go along to get along. And people, you know, I guess my mom gives them money, or gave them money But no, I mean, I think it was still, though, I was struggling, like, to a point where she kept telling me this is not normal. You know, you have to decide, like, there's a fork in the road right now, and you have to decide where you want your life to go. If you stay here and you stay around these people and you immerse yourself with these people, then you continue to kind of live like them, right? It's all about who you surround yourself with. And that was really, really hard for me. And I had a lot of resentment towards her for pulling me away from my family, you know, and I think that was hard too for me growing up and becoming an adult man and saying, this is my family now, not my old family. Like, you know, eventually you got to leave your mother, you got to leave your sister, your siblings, and you start a new family. And now this is my family. And that's what she would say. She's like, that's not your family anymore. This is your family. But it, you know, you have to choose, because the other thing is we had a child. Maya was born when I was 20. And so that made me hustle harder, but it also, I still struggled with that. Felt like I was leaving my family behind, you know, and I felt like I was the one that could help them because I was so used to supporting the household from a money standpoint and just, you know, doing stuff around the house. And so I felt like I was leaving them and that they would never be successful. They would never be happy. You know, they would always be stuck in the ruts that they were in. And so I carried a lot of guilt for a long time because of that.
Yeah, I think we feel this obligation to stick with these people, this family of ours, for several reasons. But it's hard to break that for your own health, mental health, physical health, all the things. So kudos to her for pushing that. Actually, I don't want to get there yet because there are some things I want to talk about with the generational curses and the role Chesney played in that. Talk about because you did all the things and you got the girl, you had the baby, so the girl's trapped. Just kidding.
I think we were both trapped.
Just kidding. And so here you are. And then when do things take a turn for the worse? Like you quit the pot and all that kind of stuff. Next thing you know, what happens?
So it was probably 5 years from then. So I was probably 25 to 27, somewhere in that ballpark. And I would say the years leading up to that, it was pretty normal, right? I mean, I drank, you know, we hung out with friends. Sometimes I would probably drink too much, like, you know, and say stupid stuff and, you know, have an attitude. But I would say I never had a drinking problem then. I think it got worse, but where kind of the wheels started to shake a little bit was when I was 27. I got into what I would consider a professional career, and I was actually working in the repo business in 2006 and 2007, and I was in between Terry and Ridgeland, but we still lived in Natchez, and so I would drive up to Ridgeland. I would stay in a corporate apartment. And some of the employees at the office were, you know, speed addicts because we worked crazy hours. We worked all the time. You know, we were chasing goals and chasing dollars, and they introduced me to Adderall. They're like, you know, anybody can get a prescription for it. This is what you do. This is where you go. This is what you tell them. And then you're off to the races. And I was like,
it was so easy back then.
I was like, this is, yeah. And it was like, this stuff's like a miracle drug. I mean,
it was the best.
I was definitely someone that I loved the speed. I never really liked downers. I never liked Xanax. I never liked all those. I just didn't like being down. I liked wide open. And so So yeah, I got addicted pretty bad to Adderall, and
Like right away.
yeah, I mean it.
Like, did you do it and you're like, this is the most amazing thing ever. I need to never live without this again?
Oh
Or,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and then it made me Superman too. So there's like multiple layers of identity, in my opinion, when you're in a position where you feel like you're becoming a little bit more accomplished in business, right? And you have a title now, you're a manager, and you have a team you're leading, and you're making a name for yourself. And then the layer underneath that is, I'm not good enough. I've never been good enough. I've always been like, just, the way other parents saw me when I was growing up was like, that's the kid you don't want your kid hanging out with. And so I was always struggling with that. I was always in a position where I'm like, I need to prove myself. And this Adderall gave me the ability to just outwork everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like my brain was firing on all cylinders. I could come up with ideas. I could stay up and build spreadsheets until 3:00 in the morning and then be back at the office at 6:30. And I did that for a few years. And I was also living in a corporate apartment 5 days a week. So I was alone, and I could slow down with beer, and I could speed right back up when I wanted. And, if I really needed to take the edge off and get some good sleep, I'd pop a few Xanax, and then I'm good. And then I would be right back up. And it was kind of like the justification I put out there was, I have to make a name for myself. I have to be successful. I have kids. I have a family. It's like my job as a man to provide. And those were the little lies and the little justifications that I used. And so that's where the wheels kind of started falling off a little bit. And
What a common thing, though, like that you're talking about right now. Like, there's so many men out there, I'm sure, that are maybe listening or not listening, whatever. They're out there, and they might not come from such a traumatic past that you come from, but they do feel that pressure to like make a name for themselves, provide for their families, work. And Adderall is getting them there. And little do they know it's becoming more of a problem than they possibly thought.
yeah,
And so it's I feel like that's happening a lot these days, but not a lot of people are talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
well, it's also like, especially in today's society, with all of the distractions that we have,
Mm-hmm.
it is so easy to say, I'm ADD. And I may be
Yeah.
a little bit ADHD, so I might need Adderall. And then you take it, and then you're like, I absolutely need Adderall. It's helped me. I mean, I'm working better. I'm more focused. This, that. But then obviously the wear and tear on your brain and your body and your connections with the people around you. That's the thing that people lose sight of, in my opinion, especially with any addiction, is we fail to see and feel the connection that we just lost with our loved ones. And we're so hyper-focused on something else, and then we're still feeding our addiction with some substances, and we're coming down with alcohol because it's just normal for everybody to have a drink in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
Every TV show you watch, every movie you watch, how much water do you ever see drank on shows and in movies? Never. It's always alcohol. Always the first thing they grab, whether they're feeling bad, they just got cussed out, they just lost their job, they go straight to alcohol. And so it's normalized, but we're sitting here, we're justifying all these things. And, that's the one thing that I think Chesney helped me realize after I was willing to accept it, was we have no connection anymore. You're not the person that I married. You're not the person that I know you should be and could be, because I feel it. And I'm in a substance cloud.
Yeah.
I don't feel it. I feel pretty damn good, and I'm sitting here having conversations with myself for 10 minutes because I'm stoned or I'm high on Adderall. And I realized I hadn't said a word to my family in 35, 40 minutes, sitting in the same room. And then we get mad, and we're not mad at them. We're mad at ourselves. but it projects out onto everybody else. And so, like, the accountability factor and looking in the mirror and saying, you had a problem that you need to fix. And, like, that's the part that I continuously go over. And whether I'm talking to an employee who has a problem or who has a problem with me, or I'm talking to a loved one, anytime someone tells me they don't like the way I treated them, they don't like what I said, they don't like what I did, I stop dead in my tracks and I don't respond. I think, I analyze, I look in the mirror, and I say, like, it's a major alarm moment for me anytime. Like, if Chesney tells me something, you know, like yesterday, we were driving down the road, and she says, you've been responding to me kind of snappy. And, you know, I've let it go a few times, and I'm not going to continue to do that. And I'm like, I really wish you would have said something. I mean, you said something now. I'm sorry. I will pay closer attention because I'm in my own lane. I'm in my own world. I'm doing my thing. I'm thinking about 28 different business deals I got going. I'm thinking about, you know, all the problems at work, and we just respond, and it's not the right tone. But, you know, I could have gotten defensive and said all the reasons why I should be responding that way. But, you know, it's just awareness. And I learned to accept that and be accountable. And I think that is so hard for people. It's just brutally hard for people to say, I have a problem. And it's okay. It's okay to have a problem. Everybody has problems, you know. So I probably got off track there, but with the original question.
Well, with the Adderall addiction, when did it get to the point where it was like, something's got to change? Because did it stay in that way for a while, where you're living this, you know, dual life of, you know, you're this guy here and your family's back at home? And
right at first, you know, I was convinced, and I had convinced her that I needed it. And so we were kind of on the same page, right? I needed Adderall, and so I was taking it. And then she started to notice all the bad side effects and the irritability and of course, then I was taking too much because I'm chasing the speed, and I'm not getting good sleep. I'm not eating right. That's the other thing. You got to eat right. I mean, if you really need the drug, right? Which I didn't need it. And so then she said, look, you got a problem. You're abusing Adderall, which then makes you abuse alcohol, because you could drink like a fish. And, you know, like, I could drink 3 times as much beer as I would normally drink that it would take to get me drunk. And so then it was like, now it's a problem. And so then I quit, and then I started hiding it. And so I hid it for a little while, and then I decided, if I'm remembering correctly, I think I decided to quit, and I kind of got myself away from the Adderall abuse. I would still use it every now and then, like randomly, if I could find it here or there, but I didn't keep doing the prescriptions. But then I found something else to get addicted to, and I started drinking more. And then I discovered at some point, I think probably when I was 31, I switched from, like, I would drink beer for a while, and then at night, like if I'm out with friends or out with clients or whatever, I would drink Red Bull and vodka, which was like speed. There we go again, speed and alcohol together. And it was when I left Jackson and stopped working for that company because we sold it to private equity, and they came in and kind of started wrecking the company a little bit, and the founders left, and then I eventually left and ended up with the company I'm still with today in Fort Worth, Texas. But there again, I'm working away from home. And I started there in August of 2011, and that same month, like at the end of that month or the beginning of the next month, my sister was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And that, in my opinion, I think that was where that was where the I don't care wheels fell off the
Damn
bus.
right. Yeah.
And so one of my coworkers at that company smoked pot, and I had not really smoked pot. I mean, I'd eaten a couple gummies like randomly over the last whatever years when they first came out, and Colorado was legalizing it, and that was probably, that's probably what 2013, 14, somewhere around there, and maybe it was before that. It was actually. Yeah, it was before that. But I'd smoked a few times, but I didn't care for it anymore like I used to when I was a kid. It wasn't like a drug of choice for some reason. But then I had that situation going on with her where it was high stress, and he was like an outlet, and I was living by myself in a hotel 5 days a week out there because we didn't want to move. We didn't want to move our kids out of Natchez. We didn't want to move them out of their school. And it was 2011 in August when I started there, and my sister passed away in January of 2012 on her birthday. And from that short time period, it was just like it was a roller coaster, because for one, I had left that family behind for so many years, and I had that guilt all come back. And then I'm also shoved back into that family environment where I'm communicating with my mom and my dad and my brother and my sister, because my wife, there again, she's a saint. She said, my sister was at MD Anderson in Houston. I'm in Fort Worth. And so I would try to leave Fort Worth and drive to Houston, usually in the middle of the night. And I would get there the next morning, and I would sit with her during the day, during her chemo treatments, and then I would drive back to Fort Worth, and I'd work the rest of the week, and I'd go home. And so I did that a few times, and then they said, look, we can't do anything else. We're going to send her home. And my wife said the closest hospice center was an hour and a half away from Natchez, and my wife was a registered nurse, and she said she's going to live with us, and I'll take care of her. And so we outfitted my youngest daughter's room, moved her stuff out, moved the hospital bed in there, and my wife took care of her until she passed.
Oh my goodness.
And fed her, changed her. And so that was tough, And then I think from that point on, I was just angry. I did not grieve at all, didn't grieve very well. I covered it up and buried it as fast and as hard as I could with whatever I could do, being on the road, traveling, seeing clients, partying, drinking, smoking. It was almost to a point where I accepted, like, this is who I've always been, and I just had buried it for a little while. And now it was back, and I was kind of getting to that point where I was just accepting this is just who I was meant to be, And I think when addicts get to a point where they're like, this is just who I am, and this is always, you're just accepting the bad, that's when you're almost at the bottom, and you got a real problem. And I figured out a way to lead a completely double life, smoking literally all day, every day. And people tell me now, they were like, dude, I had no idea. I interacted with people. I sat in boardrooms and client meetings and traveled all over the country nonstop on airplanes. And, I was always stoned, always. And I did it for years. And I was running from reality. I was running from grief. And it wasn't until 2018 when the wheels fell completely off the bus, but I'm getting ahead of myself. We were living in Natchez. I was traveling back and forth. I did that for 2 years, 2.5 years, where I was living in Fort Worth in a hotel. And then we finally Chesney decided we need to move. Like, I can't do this. It's like, we're too far separated. you know, you literally miss everything for the kids. You miss all the first. I think I've probably only been there maybe a handful of first days of school. All the other ones I was at work away, and so she just said, you know, hey, I think it's just going to be better. And you know, we had a lot of reasons. Obviously, the kids could go from private school to public school, go from state income tax to no state income tax. So there were some financial justifications there too, but we decided to move in 2013. And so we've been in Texas ever since 2013 with one move back to Natchez in 2017 when she couldn't take me anymore. She needed more help. And so she moved back to Natchez and I moved with them, but I still wasn't there. I was still running the roads constantly. So, but yeah, so it went from like Adderall to alcohol to marijuana. There was some cocaine abuse in there too. I didn't put a lot of that in the book, but, you know, I was in Vegas a lot, 10 times a year, sometimes conferences and trade shows and entertaining people, you know, till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And, you know, you figure out a way to make it all work. And that's what I was doing. I was just, you know, I was living a rock star lifestyle and didn't really care who was missing me or who hurt, who cared, because I didn't care. You know, I was still angry. I was angry at God. I was angry at myself mostly because I had not had a relationship with my family, with my sister, and then she was gone. And, you know, our childhood that I talked about earlier being completely normal, and my teenage years when we were learning to live the street life, we were really, really close. I mean, very rarely did you ever see the three of us not without each other. Mm-hmm. And so she was older. I was the middle, my younger brother. We all ran together constantly, no matter where we were, parties, people's houses, you know, trap houses, all the things. We were there all the time. And so it was just kind of like I bolted from that because I knew it was wrong too. I felt it. And Chesney helped me realize that. And so I was trying to do the right thing for my kid, and I was trying to break that curse and trying to get away from it. And I had to live with that guilt for a long time.
The generational curses that you talk about, your book says, she knew I was capable of more, and if we were ever going to have a successful family, I needed to break some cycles. And she was right. When I was around them, I got anxious and things always felt chaotic, and that was no way to live. It sounds like she really, really fought for you because she just always knew, you know, that there was more for you out there, and she was fighting for your marriage so hard. Was there finally like an ultimatum where you're like, I'm going to get help because I don't want to lose you?
Yeah, absolutely. So there was a period where she caught me a few times in a lie, that I was still smoking and still getting stoned, and then I would quit, and I would say I quit, and I would quit for a couple of weeks. And the thing that I realized after, you know, going through this cycle over and over was I would quit smoking, and then I would have a drink, and I would, you know, be somewhere and I'd have a drink or two. And then that buzz from that drink or two just led me right back to smoking. Mm-hmm. Like one bad decision leads to another. And so she basically gave me a bit of an ultimatum at one point where she said, okay, if the only way I'm going to force you to quit is you're going to have to take drug tests. And so every week I had to take a drug test, but I learned to fool it.
Of course.
And, and then that was just too easy. And, you know, the constant, it was just like, for me personally, internally living with this constant dual life, hiding, guilt,
Hustle.
shame, the lies. I mean, one small lie you live with can destroy your entire existence, no matter how big or small it is. It's just the guilt eats at us naturally. And so she found, it was September 2nd, 2018. I don't remember why or how exactly, but I was obviously running loose and, overly confident in my ability to hide stuff. And I always traveled with a dugout literally everywhere, no matter if I was flying, driving, traveling, I always had that dugout in my backpack.
Ballsy.
And yeah, I'm not going to say all the other stories of my travel history, but no, I throw it in my backpack and go right through TSA, and and I always convince myself they're looking for bombs and they're looking for other stuff that they're not looking for marijuana. It's legal in like 17 states or whatever the number was. And so anyway, I had it in the door of my truck, and I always kept it hidden, and I got stoned and just dropped it in there and forgot it was in there. And she found it, and I was gone. And when I came back, she was standing there with it.
Oof.
And I was just like, oh, here we go. And so
It's not mine.
no, she knew better. And so it was kind of like at that very moment, like the Mack truck hit you, and it was a relief. Because I was like, okay, finally, I don't have to hide it anymore. Even though I know I can't stay, I have to go. Because she's like, get your shit. You got to go. And I had an apartment. That was when we moved back to Natchez for that short stint, because we were raising my brother's 2 boys, and because he was so bad off. And so I had a corporate apartment in Fort Worth, and so I just grabbed a bag. I could pack and be out of the house in 10 minutes. I was so used to it. And so I just grabbed some stuff and went and kissed the kids and threw it in the truck. I told the kids I got to go to work. This is normal for them. And so I left and, got stoned on the way, got stoned when I got there. And then I had a conference like in a few days, and it was in Austin. And so I knew that would be a fun time, fun trip. And, it's like from the second until I got sober on September 12th, 2018. And from that whole time period was like just a complete blur. I do remember the Austin trip. We a bunch of us, bunch of us got stoned and rode those Lime scooters all around Austin and sang karaoke, and like it was kind of the last hurrah.
Yeah.
Because I was so broken and lonely and just lost and looking, and and I said it in the book. I would literally I'd lay in the bed and I'd go to sleep begging for something to happen to save me. I wanted to be saved so bad, and it was just like I just didn't have the answer. I didn't have it in me to break the cycle. And that's when I went to rehab was, where I learned about generational curses. And it's so crazy, that's where I learned about, and I spoke earlier about my mom and her upbringing and the generational curses she passed to us. And, my dad obviously passed his to us. And when I learned about all that, and it was just so eye-opening to me that I had the control, that I had the choices, that I had the ability to save my kids. And so for me, it's always been about other people, even though I was super selfish. It's always been about pleasing other people and supporting other people and helping other people. And, that's always, I felt kind of like that's my purpose in life, is to try my best to help other people. And I'm like, I can save my kids from this generational curse that I'm damn sure passing to them. You know, if the wheels fall off the bus completely and I'm gone, and they know, because my wife said, look, I'm not telling them lies anymore. I'm not covering for you anymore. Maya at the time was, she had to be 16, I think. And so she's old enough to know. And so she told both of them. And I got a letter from one of them that was like handwritten in pencil. And I think I still have it to this day. It actually rode in my truck with me for the last however many years, to the point that it got to where the pencil, you couldn't read it anymore. But it was just, a heartfelt letter from my kid that just said, I don't want to see you do what you're doing. And I don't, you belong with us. And it was just kind of one of those other wake up calls where it's just like, you gotta get your shit together and stop feeling sorry for yourself and stop being an idiot, just an outright selfish idiot.
Did you feel all the feelings when you read that letter, or were you still in a fog, or like?
Well, I cried like a baby.
Yeah.
It broke my heart, because the one thing that I said I would never do was be like my dad. I would not abandon my kids. And I did. I mean, I packed my shit and left in 10 minutes. And that, like, when I read the letter, it was just like, you are your father. And, time to make a change, time to choose a different path. Time to pass down something that matters and actually leave a legacy. And so, the best decision I ever made was that outpatient program that I went to. And, it was 4 hours a day, 5 to 9 p.m. And it was actually in a very brutal time within our company where we were in the middle of a merger and acquisition transaction. And I was doing a lot of analytics and providing a lot of, operational information. So I had to, which it all in God's timing for sure, because, I definitely would have lost everything. I was on, like I said, I was on the edge of the cliff, and Chesney tells me all the time, she said, the next thing you would have done, you would have got caught in the airport, or you would have got caught driving under the influence. You would have lost your job. You would have lost everything, and you would have been exactly where your dad and brother are. And so, absolutely in God's timing, I'm just glad it all unfolded the way it did.
Yeah. One of the main reasons that people don't go to treatment of any kind is because of their job. They're scared to leave their job and all that kind of stuff. So what advice do you have for them? And then what advice do you have for leaders of companies?
I would say there's always a way to make it work, whether it's outpatient, whether it's just therapy. You start somewhere, talking to somebody, go to meetings, go to therapy. I did all of those things before I actually went to rehab, but they really didn't work for me because I wasn't fully vested. I didn't understand the trauma that I needed to unpack. The number one thing that I tell people that are entering a stage of recovery where they're on that edge and they're maybe dabbling with sobriety is never be afraid to talk about your feelings. If you're hurt, if you don't understand why you feel the way you feel about your life, you need to unpack it, and always start with the earliest stories you can remember and just tell your story. If you're telling it to me, or if you're telling it to someone else, just tell their story, unpack it. You'll learn so much more about yourself. And the other thing with business leaders is we always feel like we need to be on all the time. And we feel the weight of the responsibility of the company and the employees and everything on our shoulders. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be human. And it's okay to talk about your feelings. Men are so afraid of their feelings and so afraid of looking weak because we're not meant to be weak. We're meant to be the strong ones. We're meant to be the supporters and the providers. But the vulnerability and the honesty has 10 times the amount of strength than just being silent. And I've learned that, and it's just so apparent to me. I would say I'm truly, truly blessed that I had some light bulb moments over the last 7 years that were just like, this is who you were meant to be. This is your purpose. You're fulfilling your purpose, and everything happens. Like, I was talking to a business partner and friend of mine the other day. He's been sober. It's actually a business partner's dad. He's been sober for 30 plus years. And he said, isn't it amazing that when you just do the right things and you're living the right way, good things just happen? It just kind of comes naturally. Everything just around you just kind of starts to happen naturally. You're not having to force things to happen. And I said, you're absolutely right. And I don't know if there are people out there, obviously, that don't believe in God and that believe in the universe and that believe in different things. But regardless of whatever you believe, it's just being good, projecting that goodness onto other people, loving other people, and telling people, lifting them up, always lift them up, and not care so much about yourself that the good things do just start to happen. And so I would just say you have to be self-aware, you have to be accountable, you have to be vulnerable, and you have to be very, very, very intentional. Intentionality is key, and we get so lost in just our daily lives that we forget to be intentional with
So true.
with how we speak, how we love, how we interact. Don't just always chase the dollar. That's one of my problems is I'm always chasing a deal.
That I wanted to ask. Sorry, I cannot stop talking. I wanted to ask. So when you were talking about like your addiction, and it was, this, and then it was the alcohol, and it was Adderall, and but underneath all of that, it seemed like your addiction to work that was there the whole time. Is that something you struggle with, and how do you balance that?
Yes, it's absolutely something I struggle with. I balance it mostly with Chesney. She's the balance for sure, and she helps me tremendously by, one, being honest, and two, just checking me when I need to be checked. I work a lot from home. I have an office about 25 minutes from home, but since COVID, not a lot of people go into the office, and we downsized the office. So I'm at home a lot, and then I'm on the road when I'm not at home, which I'm on the road a lot. I think this week would have actually been the first week that I've been home for the entire week in 12 weeks.
Sorry.
And so, no, it's fine. I'll be home next week, all week, which is nice. But the balance is just like putting yourself on a schedule, for one, is really important. And saying, okay, I'm okay with working from 8 to 5. I expect employees to work from 8 to 5. Some people have different schedules. It's 9 to 6 or whatever, but I'm okay with being available from 8 to 5. If it's before 8 o'clock, I'm working out, or I'm reading, I'm catching up on material. I'm talking with Chesney. We have our coffee time every morning where I make the coffee and we sit and chat. And then in the evenings, that's where the brakes kind of get put on sometimes, where I'm still on phone calls and it's 6 o'clock, then at 7 o'clock, and I've broken up a little bit here and there and kind of spent some family time, and then I'm back on a phone call because, you know, deals never stop. People call me and I'm talking about a different deal and another, and she'll just say, hey, it's time to leave that phone alone, put it down. You've been, you know, I've let it go on for a couple of days, and so that's where I completely respect her time, and it brings me back to when I was on the road so much and I was abusing everything under the sun. And she would always tell me, those people get the best of you and we always get the leftovers. And I don't want to do that. I mean, I have to be accountable. And so when she checks me, there again, I stop, think, yet you're right, I need to stop. And I just have to leave it alone, right? It's a, like, that's the worst addiction everyone has. This stupid device.
Yeah.
And even when I'm cautious and I realize that it's a problem at the dinner table or in a restaurant, and I'm looking around at other people on their phones, and I'm judging them for being on their phones, and I pick the damn thing up and look at it 3 times in a matter of 2 minutes. And it's the worst addiction ever.
It is. I don't know. Do you ever look around, like when you're going places and stuff like that? And
It's like Orwellian as fuck,
It's
man. Like everybody's
wild.
looking at the thing that's looking at them.
it
Yeah.
makes me so sad.
1984.
Yeah. The Orwell, for sure. It's like we're in unknown territory for sure.
And we're staring at it. It's staring at us.
It's the
Well, you brought
brainwashing machine.
You brought the best to us today. Thank you very, very much for these little moments of just chit chatting with you and getting to know your story better. I love the work. I hope we can keep up with you and what you get into next. Let us know if there's some more work. If you ever want to come back on, Brynn, you're lucky to have such a cool friend. Ready for your book whenever you get time for it. You sound like 2 times in the book that I kind of teared up a little bit. One was your karaoke, because I too have had my turn at the mic and I know what it's like. But mainly the boys, when you went to pick up your brother's kids, like hearing how they were, you know, one of them had their own kind of like semi-language made up, just wasn't communicating, wasn't, you know, I've seen so many families in my life and my story with that kind of stuff. And I mean, I could feel it. I could feel that brokenness, and just have you know, step in and do what you needed to do. I mean, you're obviously a high-functioning alcoholic. Even when you were using, what you're doing now, a lot of alcoholics are not like that. But even in the depths of despair, being able to step in and say, you know what, I got to do this. I'm doing this right now. I mean, that's great. I mean, you were saving lives. You know, you're doing that, and I really did. That kind of choked me up to see, even just to read about it firsthand. Like, wow, because I didn't. I ran from everything. I ran from things that weren't even chasing me. You know, like, but to have just to see you like going there, like, no, step in, step up. That was really moving. So thanks for sharing that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a guilt problem for me too, though. You know, I stepped in, but it was my wife who pushed that too. She pushed to step in to take those boys and to raise them and give them a loving home, and I was still in my addiction at the same time. So yes, I was being much better father figure than they had. I was doing the baseball and the football and had them in all the things that kids should be in, enjoying their life. And we took them on great vacations and did all the things. And I was the one externally outside getting all the praise. You know, she was too, but I felt guilty every time someone gave me praise for that, because I was hiding in my addiction at the same time. And so I can appreciate it now for sure, and understand that, you know, it did mean a lot to them, but it was also a guilt problem that I had with that whole situation.
Yeah. Well, I'm grateful that you came on today. I wish we had Chesney on too. I would love to hear kind of her version of things and how she put up with you. Good Lord.
I told her actually this morning, we were driving here. I said, you know, you're the star of this book, whether you know it or not.
She is.
I said, everyone that I've talked to that's read this book says I have to meet your wife, or I want to ask her so many questions.
Yeah.
And I said, you're the star, whether you like it or not. And she said, well, I told you from the beginning that you made me look way too nice in that book and way too much like an angel and a saint. And I said, but you really are. I mean, you put up with hell.
Yeah.
And you put up with so much, and you carried the weight of so much, and you're still here. And she needs to unpack some of that stuff and talk about it, I think. And I mean, I think there's a lot of knowledge and a lot of strength in her that a lot of other people, women and men, included, would benefit from.
For sure. And like, just to have like the courage to step up and say the things that need to be said, even if it, I'm sure with your family situation, I'm sure it was like she wasn't scared to look like the bad guy. You know what I mean? Like she cared too much about you and about y'all's family that you created. I don't know, we're going to get her back.
Yeah. we can work on her.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for coming to Mississippi, for coming to talk to us. Thank you for writing this book. We're definitely looking forward to the next one. We do have a QR code up there for you guys to scan. It really is a great read. And I definitely suggest it. And please like, subscribe, do all the things. It really does help our podcast and what we're doing. But we will see you guys next week, I think. Brian Hubbard, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to see if he can give me Joe Rogan's address. Like, let's go. But anyways, y'all have a great week. We'll see you next week.